I know this is a couple of days late past when I usually post the weekly Q&A videos, but as the old saying goes, better late than never. Which if you really think about it is kind of dumb. Because let's say you're having a massive heart attack, or you have some type of brain aneurysm, and you need that procedure and you need it now. Better late than never still probably means you're dead. So that saying is kind of stupid. Sometimes it applies maybe and sometimes it doesn't. But anyways, thanks to all of you that submitted your questions for this weekly Q&A. I will be doing another one in a few days, so stay tuned and stay tuned for all the other content, NFL related especially, on this channel. I've broken this Q&A down into 3 parts. The first part will be sports, second part politics, and the third part is some weird shit because some of y'all are weird fuckers. So let's get started with some sports questions. Alright, let's get to it. Harbaugh We Trust kicks us off by asking, it looks like Sam Darnold should stay in college another year. Thoughts? The very simple answer I have to that question is no. If you have the opportunity to be the number 1 overall pick, if you have the opportunity to be a top 5 pick, if you have the opportunity to be a top 10 pick, you declare, leave college, get your degree later if you must, and go to the NFL, period. Period. I think back to, and now granted we are in a different NFL salary cap and in particular a rookie contract environment, but I remember back in heading into the 2010 draft and debate or question about whether or not Jake Locker was ultimately going to declare. He made the decision to go back to Washington for another year, and granted he still ended up being picked 8th overall in the 2011 draft. But the difference between being picked in the top 10 in 2010 and the top 10 in 2011 was anywhere between $10 to $20 million of guaranteed money. Because 2011, of course, was the first draft where those rookies eventually ended up on the rookie salary cap that we have today, which helped prevent holdouts, which helped keep the rookie contract values in line and all of that. If Locker had declared in 2010, he may have been drafted after Sam Bradford, but probably still goes top 10. Could have ended up being the 8th overall pick. And either way, would have made a shit ton more money. The whole point I'm getting at is going back to school guarantees you nothing. In fact, it could be a disastrous decision, especially if you're somebody like Darnold that is not 6'5", that doesn't have a cannon for an arm, because all going back to school for another year does is get you another year where you're only getting paid USC professional money. So, you know, a high 6 to low 7-figure gig, mind you, per year there in Los Angeles. But it exposes you to injury risk. It's also another year of film that scouts, front offices, executives, general managers can break down and poke more holes in your game. So you could go from being a top 10 pick in the 2018 draft to being a 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick in the 2019 draft. There's absolutely no good business justification if Darnold gets any thoughts that going to the draft advisory committee, anything like that, that he could be a 1st round pick, he must declare, period. Period. And anybody advising him to do anything else is a moron. There's too much at chance, too much to risk, and too little to gain by going back another year. Period. Pete Webster. Mitchell Trubisky for Deshaun Watson straight up. Would you take it? No. And the simple reason is we've only seen Deshaun Watson start a couple of games. We haven't seen Trubisky start any games, so who knows what the hell these guys are going to do long term. We don't know. So at this point in time, hell no, I would not take that deal. DeQuanta Clark, what should the Patriots do about their defense? Panic. Because that defense is absolutely terrible. I mean, that's an embarrassment. This is a team coming off of being the Super Bowl champions, 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, and their defense is doo-doo. I mean, they spent big money on Stephon Gilmore. You already have Malcolm Butler there, and their secondary can't stop anybody. They can't consistently rush the passer. I mean, they're just terrible. And part of it is getting rid of guys like Chandler Jones and Jamie Collins and getting very little back in terms of draft picks. And then when you do have those draft picks and you spend them on the defensive side of the ball, you spend them on buffs like Dominic Easley and Jordan Richards and Geno Grissom and others. So the number one thing to do would be draft better. So that's not necessarily something that's going to fix that defense right away, and I don't know what else can fix it. Maybe you hope as the season goes along that the defense gels and you start to figure it out. Or maybe you need to change your offensive philosophy, become more of a ball control unit, take the ball a little bit more out of Tom Brady's hands, run more, control the clock, so you limit the time that your defense is on the field. That might be the easiest, most effective way to fix it at this point in time, because at this point, I don't know what they could do schematically or talent-wise that's going to make any difference. Ronnie Simmons, was Cam a one-year wonder, and can he ever get back to MVP form? First question, was he one-year wonder? Based off of that level of productivity, you have to start to think yes. Not to say that he wasn't a franchise type of quarterback before that, but he played at an elite level in 2015. He was a worthy MVP guy on a 15-1 team. Can he ever get back to that form? I hope so, but I wouldn't put my money on it. Duke THS, of course the Bills fan is going to ask this question because, let's face it, there's not a lot typically to ask about the Bills, although they're having a pleasantly surprisingly good start to the season. Is Steve Tasker a Hall of Famer? Steve Tasker is widely thought of as the best special teams player of all time. And the argument might be that he was so good at what he did for so long, even if the role was limited, we value special teams play. He's arguably the best to ever do it, so why wouldn't the best that ever did it end up in the Hall of Fame? I think part of the challenge is you have so many other guys between players and coaches and owners that are so much more worthy than a Steve Tasker that I just can't justify putting him in anytime soon. With that said, down the road, I expect a similar question to come up about Devin Hester, who is unanimously thought of by anybody with a football brain as the greatest return man in NFL history. And does being the greatest return man in NFL history and the impact that he had on the league and on that Bears organization in the mid to late 2000s enough to justify being a Hall of Famer? And I might argue yes. At some point in time, if these guys are the best at what they did for a long period of time, why can't they? It's kind of like in baseball. You've got that situational middle relief type of guy, but if they were really, really good, top flight elite at what they did as a 7th inning, 8th inning guy for 15, 20 years, thought of as one of the best in the business at what they did for a long period of time, why can't they be in the Hall of Fame? So I'll give you Steve Tasker if you give me Devin Hester. I'm just not expecting it to happen anytime soon. Jeff's Ego, my buddy, ask, who are you leading MVP candidates right now? In no particular order, because I will give you who I think is the NFL MVP through the first quarter of the season in a video that is coming up on this channel soon. Leading candidates would have to include Aaron Rodgers, Kareem Hunt, Alex Smith, Todd Gurley. Who else? I mean, I'm just spitballing off the top of my head here, so forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody. Maybe, I wouldn't say Carson Wentz. I think I named most of the notable ones. Who I think is the MVP 4 weeks through the season. You'll have to watch that video to find out. Jack McCarty, your opinion on the Eagles' season so far, and they sit now at 3-1, and I can't say I'm that surprised. They're a good team. I don't know if they're a very good or great team, but they're a good team, and at this point in time, the way they're constructed, they have a chance at least, especially with the Giants being complete shit, to win the NFC East. I still think the Cowboys ultimately will, but I'll be stunned if the Eagles don't finish second and be sniffing at a wild card berth come the end of the year. Benjamin Ball, the best rivalry in the NFL today. Ooh. It most certainly is not Bears-Packers like it should be. Just because it's the oldest doesn't mean it's the best. Bears-Lions is technically the longest continually running rivalry in the NFL because the Bears and Packers did not play in that strike-shortened 82 season, but we don't classify it as that. For years, it was Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. That was the rivalry. That was the creme de la creme matchup. That was the one that got people geeked the most. I know you suggested like Ravens-Steelers, and that maybe, but even like honestly, Ravens-Steelers is not the type of rivalry that really gets you all that excited, I wouldn't think. So I don't know if there is one truly great rivalry in the NFL right now. Maybe some good ones, but I don't think any one is great. Vance Smith, is Hugh Jackson on the hot seat with the Browns now 0-4? I don't think so, and I most certainly hope not. Stay the course. Stay the course is what they should do. Josh Berg, thoughts and predictions for the Minnesota Vikings this season? Well, especially now, you don't know when Sam Bradford's going to be healthy. Fucking imagine that. And now, unfortunately, star rookie running back Dalvin Cook is blowing out his ACL, so he's out for the year. You're probably staring down the barrel of a 7-9, 8-8 season. The James Gem Show. What were your feelings heading into Super Bowl 41, and does your Peyton Manning hate stem from that? No, my Peyton Manning hate does not stem from that. It was a dislike that I had before, during, and after that. And no, the Super Bowl 41 thing, my hate went in other directions in other places, not necessarily a Peyton. That's been a pretty consistent thing throughout his entire career, was pointing out things. And even then, even though I wasn't a fan of his, I still mention, he's an all-time great, first ballot Hall of Famer, greatest regular season quarterback of all time. So I've thrown some clear-cut recognition his way. Just my feelings heading into Super Bowl 41 is that whole entire season living in Rockford, Illinois, all these fucking quasi-Bears fans coming out of the woodwork like dumb dicks, talking about how Rex Grossman was the guy, you were wrong, blah, 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 blah. I said, it'll catch up, it will catch up. And then unfortunately, got all the way to the Super Bowl, and I told everybody those 2 weeks running up into it, I said, it's going to catch up with them this week. You're going to find Rex Grossman is a turd. So those are my feelings. Was wanting that team to win and knowing with Rex Grossman as their starting quarterback, they had absolutely no shot. No shot. And unfortunately, that was going to be the place. That was going to be the platform where the weakness of the Bears was exposed once and for all. And I was going to have to deal with what I knew was coming, a Super Bowl loss that I still have not got over to this day. And Master Havoc. Thoughts on the Cubs' chances this postseason? They are the defending champions. Their pitching staff has not been quite the same in terms of the starters, Arrieta, Lester, and Hendricks compared to last year. But if they find that groove in the playoffs, they've still got the fundamental core of that team intact. They can still repeat. Now, everybody's focusing on Indians and Dodgers and even the Nationals and so forth. The Cubs are the champs. You still got to go through the Cubs. That's all I'm saying. Alrighty, the sports questions are out of the way. Let's get to some of the political ones. Yeezy Todd kicks us off. Why is the narrative about kneeling not about police brutality and inequality, and it's about the flag and disrespecting it and the anthem now? I think some of that is the blame of the people delivering the message and not getting the message out. I think obviously a big part of it is people in their ignorance and lack of understanding. People also being caught up in the propaganda of the red, white, and blue America, and talking about how dare you speak out in that manner, even though the NFL gets paid by the military to put on these patriotic displays. Your taxpayer dollars, did you fucking ask for your tax dollars to go towards shit like that? Just saying. But a lot of it is about packaging and presentation. And ultimately, you have to know, fair or not, that if you kneel during a national anthem like that, in that manner, that's what people are going to associate it with. Because you're doing it during that song about that flag. Okay, so we have to have some common sense here. I mean, we really do. The way to have combated that would have been for those players that chose to take a knee, whether they were religious or not, was pull out the Holy Bible, put it there on the field, and pray during the national anthem. Because if you would have done that, even the most ignorant of rednecks, the most racist of people, the most insensitive and ignorant just in general to what this is all about, would have had to have been very careful. Because now, instead of it being about the flag and the anthem, if you bitch about that, now it's about God, and in particular the Christian God. So you're going to bitch at them about disrespecting the flag and the anthem. Now you bitch about that, you're disrespecting their Christian God that you allege to believe in too. Good luck fighting that fucking battle. I'm just saying. But a lot of it is a lack of understanding, and it automatically gets pegged as racism, and I feel like that's unfair, because in many cases, if you have never experienced it, if you're not aware of it, it's not a part of your reality, then what are you going to know about it? And why would you bother to know about it if it doesn't really personally affect you? I'm just saying. Like, you know me, I live with a black woman, okay? So, but our backgrounds are entirely different. I'm the one that grew up as poor trash. She's the one that grew up with a two-parent household, both of them working for the military and the government, making six figs, living in a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house in the DC suburbs. So, even though she will sit there and talk about how she is black, frankly, coming from somebody who was able to have her parents pay for all of her school and have no student loan debt, what the fuck does she know? That's the truth. I know much more about those type of issues and those type of things than she could ever imagine. And I can speak to it from a standpoint of seeing the interactions I've had with the police over the years when I've had somebody white in the car or been with somebody that was white in a car versus somebody that was black. I can promise you this much. I've never had anybody ask for my ID, question me, get me out of a car, pull me out of a car, cuff me, anything like that, have a gun pulled on me when I've had somebody white in the car. And I think back to way back when we were like, I think I was like 19 years old, riding with one of my buddies from school. We were coming back from work. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's doing 155. Dumbass thing to do. And he's got a couple of sacks of weed in his glove compartment. We get pulled over by the cops. What do you think happens? A whole lot of ha ha ha, yuck yuck yuck, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to issue you a warning though, because you said you guys came from work and you look like the type that wouldn't lie to the police, and off we go. I saw it happen time after time after time when I would ride with my dad or my mom and they would get pulled over or such and such. Especially with my dad. Sometimes my mom got the bad treatment with the cops, but damn it, Bonnie Sue knew how to play the game too. But whenever I've had somebody black in my car or ridden with somebody that was black in their car and we got pulled over, oh my God. There's 5, 6 fucking cop cars. They want my ID. They're asking me, questions about shit. We're having to stand out of the car. We've been cuffed before. The last time I could think of was a couple of years ago. I was riding back with one of the guys at work. We had gotten sent home due to a snowstorm. So we're driving back. You know, streets are in terrible shape here in Virginia because they don't know what the hell to do with 2 inches of snow. Oh, it's fucking World War III pandemonium. And we get pulled over because the cop said that he didn't have his headlights on when he had his wipers on, which was bullshit because I had even specifically told him to turn on the lights with his wipers. Remember, it's a state law, so he did. They were trying to get him for DWB. It was a female cop on top of it, just all types of bad. And ultimately, they run his ID, and of course, because they really had no justification to, they wanted to run my ID. They come back, I'm fine. They're trying to sit there and threaten to arrest him because they're saying he's driving on a suspended license. To which, after about 45 minutes of sitting in the middle of the street, based off of where the cop told us to pull over, we eventually determined that he did not have a suspended license, but they still were not going to let him drive the car. And the quote from the police officer I thought was incredible. She said, he's the type, her words, not mine, he's the type that's always going to get into trouble. And it's a good thing you're here because it's saving him from going to jail. Even though he was complying with the law, driving well under the speed limit considering the road conditions, and he did have his lights on while his wipers were on, they were ready to haul his ass to jail over a suspended license that wasn't even suspended. I had to sit there and get in the driver's seat and drive us off until we got out of sight a couple miles down the road, and then we switched back. I can't tell you how different the experience is from the white perspective and the non-white perspective. It's a reality. People that deny it are either willfully ignorant or kind of situationally ignorant. So I think sometimes we get into a point where we get so much into, pardon the pun, black and white on a lot of these issues. And oftentimes the reality is in that big gray area in the middle. So ultimately, when it comes to kneeling during the anthem, It's going to be perceived that way, which is ignorant, but you also must understand that perception is the reality in some cases, and people are going to sit there. For the people that are so bothered by it, don't watch the fucking anthems. For the NFL, stop showing the fucking anthems. Who gives a shit? Either watch football or fucking don't. Just saying. 32J Locke. What would have happened if Obama never ran for president? McCain might have won in 2008. That's who the hell was going to win? Hillary? Hillary wasn't going to win. It's the truth. And it's funny, we look back through the scope of history and we always assume it was a foregone conclusion, a surefire thing, that Obama was going to get elected in 2008 going against McCain, once especially he put out there Sarah Palin. And that is complete and total bunk. That is bullshit. Because after that Republican convention in 2008, if I remember, there was a big bump in the polls to the point where McCain-Palin ticket was leading the Obama-Biden ticket pretty consistently by about a point. And since it favors the GOP, conservatives will like that poll. It was once you got into the late summer and then specifically into the fall, and you had the big financial crisis really start to hit, that with all the other things of the Bush era, enough was enough for people. But people always think that Obama being president was such a foregone conclusion. It wasn't necessarily. And who knows what would have happened if he didn't. Could McCain have prevented the Tea Party and Trump political deadlock? He may or may not have prevented the Tea Party movement. Now, granted, the Tea Party movement was a direct result of Obama's election, and to think it was anything other than that is complete and total horseshit. Because if you're concerned about taxation, you're concerned about fiscal responsibility, even though advocating for massive, sweeping, selfish tax cuts is anything but fiscal responsibility, again, talking to one part of many parts of the hypocrisy of the Tea Party, would they have even needed to be created? No, it was a direct reaction to the black guy being elected a liberal Democrat. It's that simple. That's what it was. So he could have, but there could have been other factions within the Conservative Party, that conservative movement within the GOP, and we still could have had that issue. David Allen Root, if Trump or Pence don't run in 2020, who should the GOP turn to? Probably John Kasich, even though he has certain things that he's pretty crazy on too. He presents himself in a way that you at least feel like he's an adult in the room, even if you don't necessarily agree with him. And based off of the childish antics of the current commander-in-chief over the past, 8.5 months now, the GOP might look for a counterbalance to that, somebody more middle of the road that actually has some political chops that could get some bipartisan stuff done and acts like an adult in the room. That would be my guess. Would go safer with somebody like a Kasich. Dan Dillon, thoughts on the theory of evolution? I mean, ultimately, it's a theory of evolution. The vast majority of scientific evidence points to it being reality. I think people that are denying it are kind of crazy, honestly. I think they buy into too much of the control that has been put in place for thousands of years of religion. I mean, like, if you really think this planet is 6,000 years old, if you believe this planet is flat, if you believe so many of these other things, you're fucking insane. That's just the way I look at it. So I tend to subscribe to the theory of evolution. That doesn't mean that there can't be some creation in there. That doesn't mean that there can't be some divine force in there. As is so often the case when I believe it comes to mortal man, what we believe to be true and what is actually true are two entirely different things, and we are incredibly arrogant if we think we even have one iota of an understanding of how this universe actually works. In this last section are the fun and weird stupid questions, also known as the white people section of the Q&A. I'm kidding, but I think all three that asked it were white guys. I'm just saying, it's not about that, but it's kind of funny. Wilson GTS 12, will you adopt me? Why in the hell would you want my 36-year-old ass to adopt you? What do you think that is going to accomplish? There is no massive inheritance to reap. I don't exactly have a ton of cool factor. I'm kind of a lame ass. But maybe you feel like you would get some good perspective on the world. But you're probably better off with the parents that you have, Wilson. I'm just saying. No offense to you, but let's be real here. Dougish16 asks, what really happened? The Taker as the American badass, or Michael Jordan playing for the Washington Wizards. You want to know what really happened? This just happened. That just happened. Two of them right at you for that two-fisted fuck you question. The Undertaker is the American badass. What a bunch of propaganda bullshit. It was clearly the fake taker. The fake taker. And then the other part is not even worth dignifying with a response because it is just crazy bullshit. The ultimate in conspiracy theories. Just saying. It is as much bullshit as the official 9/11 story. It is as much bullshit as JFK was killed by a lone gunman and there was no conspiracy at any point whatsoever. Craziness. And then Mac Neuroth closes us out by asking, what are your thoughts on hentai? Remember all that shit I said about the weird white boy questions? And, well, here we go, Mac. Validates all that I just said. You weird fucks. Now, I know us as white boys. We can be some freaky, nasty fuckers. And there are two types of white boys when it comes to the freaky, nasty fuck types. Those that own it, and those that are it but are ashamed to admit it. You are not going to tell me that you play it straight-laced missionary only once you get married. Bullshit. Bullshit. As a man, you'd prefer to put it in her mouth or put it in her butt, even strictly for punishment purposes, and the vagine is only there for you to bust a nut in so that way you can create a legacy. Legacy. But this whole thing about animated crap and their boobs are 10 times the size and their asses are ginormous and all, that's just weird white people shit that I can't get down with. Don't you introduce that hentai into my black lesbian porn. I do my thing, you do yours. You beat off to a roided up Minnie Mouse or whatever the fuck, and I'll beat off to Jada Fire and Misty Stone, okay? That's what I'll do. That's what you do. You do your thing, I'll do mine. But you're fucking weird. Anyways, thanks for all the questions for this Q&A. I hope you had some fun with it. I'll do one again this upcoming weekend, so check that out and check out all the other videos here on the Schlag Daddy TV channel.